Okay, we're ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so I should get to the site.
I guess so, if you want to be a part of this. Guess I'll see what my hair is doing. Don't think I noticed. Nope, I look okay. Even though I have not been able to comb it out because it's still wet. Hey everybody. We're here. Ready to rock. Somebody's here.
I'm here.
Yes, you are. Someone did a like. Yay for likes.
Interesting and funny, when I'm watching you on my screen over here, you always look yellowish. But then your video, I watched it, came out perfect.
I don't know what to say. Hey.
Me neither. Oh, wait a minute.
Waiting for some comments to say hello.
Oh, said hello.
Well, then why is mine not showing?
And Russell says, hey everyone, happy Sunday.
That's weird.
Why not? Says, how are you doing? We're doing pretty good, except for apparently...
My computer is not showing me anybody's... Here we go. I had to pop it out because it wasn't working like usual. There we are. Okay. Why not says hello. And says hello. Happy Sunday. Opal says hello. Yay. Frankie says hello. Love your necklace. Thank you. All right.
Why not ask how we're doing?
And how are we doing? Well, I've had a bit of an emotional week for me because my son's mother-in-law was in the hospital, still in the hospital. So I was doing a lot of healing energy for her. She wasn't getting better, so they decided to stop doing life-saving measures and took out the feeding tube, and then she woke up and got better. So it's been a really kind of odd roller coaster. Why Not says, I wanted to say I've watched some documentary about witches and there was your image from YouTube. What? I'd like to know what documentary I'm in.
It doesn't mean you're in the documentary.
Oh, okay. Darlene says hello, hi. Sheila says hi from West Virginia. Why Not says that's awesome. Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, it was emotional for sure. And weirdly enough, the day I was feeling particularly fragile, I went shopping and a total stranger, the woman at the checkout line at the grocery store, decided to tell me that the universe knew I was doing good work and saw me for what I was doing and wanted me to know that, which was kind of like, I've never met this woman before. It was interesting and appreciated. The universe gave me a little message and said, hey, you're doing all right. So but yeah, it was interesting doing the healing work with her, the mother-in-law, because for some reason we're very connected, even though I've only met her a couple of times, like at the wedding and then when they first came down here. She's dreamt about me, which I find fascinating. And so the connection was really strong. So I set it up so that she had the energy to use if she wanted to, but when they said they were disconnecting her from life-saving measures and stuff, I also disconnected the grounding cord that I'd put in place, so she was free to leave if she wanted to and wouldn't be held back, and called her mother over from the other side to be there just in case. And then they took out the feeding tube. She woke up and was hungry, and she's been improving so far. Not sure how long she has. She definitely is not in very good shape. But I think she's staying for her daughter to give her some more time to process that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. So kind of like, took over my life for a bit, which is what these events will do, and made me think about it. It's one of those things. Life and death are part of the equation. So, but it was interesting that my son asked and my daughter-in-law asked me to help her with her transition, which is what they called it. I thought that was a nice word because it is sort of a transition going from one state of existence to another. Um, yeah. So I haven't been around my son much for a long time because he lived, down in California. And so now that he's moved up here, we're slowly getting acquainted with each other again, and I guess this is part of that. So, Darling says that was cool. It was cool. So I thought it was fascinating that there are no planets in retrograde. Apparently that doesn't happen very often. Sophia says hello. Hi, Sophia. You're the woman from Greece, right? You must be up late. But welcome. If you're the right Sophia, we might have more than one.
Nothing in retrograde. I guess that means it's time to get in touch with the entire universe.
Well, it also means that if things aren't going right, you have no one else to blame but yourself. You cannot blame the planets. Which I feel sorry for Mercury because it gets blamed for a lot of stuff. Poor thing.
It's slippery.
But yeah, so. Anywho. It's nice to see that not everybody is watching whatever the game is that's on today.
The Super Bowl or whatever.
Yeah, that's happening today. It's like, you never know. But then not all of you are from here, so not everybody is so interested in the sports and whatnot. Even those of us who are here, which we're not, never have been. I think it's great they're having a good time and making loads of money, but it's not fun for me to watch.
Except for BattleBots, so that's kind of fun because you get to watch robots.
Well, right, but that's not people being hurt. It's really hard for an empath to watch people getting chunk. Why not says, I'm from Georgia. Sophia says, yes, I had to. I wanted to watch you live. Well, welcome from Greece. We love having people from around the planet, and we get people from a lot of different places. South Africa, Australia, and in I can't think of the names of those countries right now. Anyway, yes. And I'm hoping, all the stuff that's going on right now in Turkey and Syria is just so horrendous. But that's another thing about living on a planet. It happens, unfortunately, and sometimes we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So what would you all like to talk about today? Since the subject is wide open, as usual.
Yeah, throw some magical thoughts out there, mystical, whatever.
Whatever you've got. Life, death, everything in between. So here we are. One more person has joined us. I haven't done this paranormal investigation as yet. It was supposed to be on Tuesday when I ended up doing the healing for somebody. Why not says divination. What about it? Forms, types, different methods. Does it work? Does it not work?
Yeah, well, I'd say it depends almost 100% on the person doing the divination rather than what style they use so much.
Well, and whether or not they should know the information. I think there's some times where if a person finds out something, it might not necessarily be in their best interest to know, that their guides might sort of block, or their subconscious might block the information. Balloonhead says hello, hello, hello.
It's also kind of difficult for some people. I haven't had good luck with divination at all, except for a little bit with the tarot, but only if I follow this long process. It takes about 2 hours to get a tarot reading.
I get a lot of my stuff in my dreams at this point, but I did tarot for years. I started doing tarot when I was in high school, so 1964, I think, is when I started doing the tarot. That's when I got my first deck. And it taught me a lot about magical systems and symbolism and associations and everything else. Oh, Ruth is here. Hi, Ruth. And I found that for me, tarot was useful in that it would give me a pretty clear picture of where I was at, and then where that was leading me. And then I could see where I was going with it and decide if I wanted to stay on that path or not. But doing it for other people was sometimes strange. I kind of got turned off to the whole notion when I did a reading for a young man who was trying to decide if he was going to go to Vietnam. And I actually saw the death card in his reading, and although death doesn't always mean finality completely, it seemed pretty clear to me at the time that if it wasn't his physical death, it was definitely going to be a change, a death of his personality, experiences, and so forth. And he didn't listen to me. His girlfriend said he was going to be fine, so he went. And that sort of brought up the whole notion of responsibility. Like, if you're doing divination for other people, how responsible are you for what they choose to do with that and the information that you give them? And so it was sort of, one of my first ethical conundrums or quandaries or whatever. It made me think about what the consequences are of telling people information that then they might decide to act on or believe. And you're human and you might be wrong. It's not an exact science. It's not like taking something out with a measuring tool and saying this is this size and this is what that is. So Violet says, hi, Siofra and Ian. I'm with you in spirit listening for 45 minutes. I wish I had questions, but I am on my decan kick right now. Love you guys as I listen. You make me laugh a lot sometimes. Why Not says, I use tarot cards. Sometimes I feel that it won't answer my personal questions, but for others, when I read, it's like a waterfall of information. Yeah, that can be difficult too. Sometimes getting someone else to read your cards because you can have your own internal blockage for seeing what's happening in your own life. Because, that's how we get where we are, is our own peculiar blockages that we have. Why it's harder for us sometimes to learn our own lessons and easier to see what other people need to learn. So sometimes that's a good idea if you're feeling blocked by that. Find another reader and you can do readings for each other, and that would be good. Ruth says, I'm making my own tarot. Cool.
That's the best way to do it, theoretically.
And
I've never done it.
Yeah, Balloon Head says, I like simple oracle cards and tarot decks with lots of imagery because I don't usually use the cards' meanings much. Well, you can use almost anything you want as a tool for divination, because if you've decided that this is a divinatory tool for you, the universe will adapt to it. So like you could take a book you like and say, when I open up this book with a question in my mind and I point at a word, this is going to tell me something about what I need to know. So that's how systems can get started.
Crowley used to do the thing where he had a ring, and then whatever the ring touched, that would be his in a book. There's a name for that, by the way.
Yeah, I can't think of it.
Bibliomancy? I don't know.
Bibliomancy might be actually the name for it. But there's a lot of different kinds of divination tools that are out there.
Depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for a particular symbol, draw that on a piece of paper and you look at it and then look away till you get, there's a process. Basically, it's a type of divination where you go visit on the mental plane. You make that symbol, you make it into a door in front of you and you walk through it.
To learn something about the meaning of the symbol.
To divine the symbols and things. And you'll usually get images and things that mean something to you. If they don't mean something to you, they're probably not relevant. But you can also pull out things that you never knew before and check them out, find out they're true, which is always interesting when that happens.
Now, I've used crystal balls and occasionally freaked people out by the things that I would see about their life in a crystal ball, which sort of dissuades me from using a crystal ball for other people because, I panic people without trying, and so then if I do something it looks like I'm trying, it can come off strange.
Either that or they don't panic at the time until it comes true and then they panic.
Yeah.
So,
And
oh my
and
God.
that's the thing, and I've had some really bad psychics tell me things that were so obviously not true. I kept wondering what they were reading. If there was someone hiding in the closet, or there was a dog down the street or something that they were picking up on, because it clearly wasn't me. And I always wonder about those kinds of readings, because, like, is the person just believing their own palaver that they think that they're psychic and they're not?
Well, there's a school of thought, in fact, that trains psychics with
Right.
that premise
Anything
in
that
mind.
comes into
Yes.
mind is valid, which is just ridiculous.
Right, I agree.
Especially if you haven't worked on yourself, the projections can be unending. And then the other part of that is that people are easily led, most of them, not all of them obviously, but it's not hard to influence someone who's coming looking for an answer and looking for any answer, and then you're the one who's giving it to them. So then there's that ethical question again, like, what's the right way, the right time to do that kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting.
And then do you want to take the responsibility for what they might do with the information or might not, assuming they believe you at all, or they might overbelieve you and take some drastic action that wouldn't be called for, when you didn't mean to emphasize something and they put a lot of emphasis on one thing and overreact.
Well, there have been numerous cases where someone has gone to a psychic and has been told that their husband is having an affair, and then they confront their husband and leave their husband, and then the husband goes to kill the psychic.
Well,
It's actually happened more than once.
We know of an incident personally that happened like that where I do anyway. I don't know if
I've heard about it.
Was I with you when that happened?
No, I
No,
think that was before we met.
prior.
But
Yeah, anyway, a psychic who told one of his students that she should leave her husband because he was being a big problem with her, and unfortunately it sounds like he was right. The woman needed to leave her husband because he came to the studio where they were at, and held a gun on the psychic guy and held him down to the floor with a gun to his head, for some time, and that ended up with nobody getting hurt.
except for fear and anxiety.
I pointed out to my friend who at the time was enrolled in this university or whatever they called it, geez, if he was that psychic, you'd think he'd have known that somebody was going to become putting a gun to his head. I don't know that psychic doesn't usually work that way exactly, but
Well, no, it's not that
considering
precise,
it's
but
sort of
still, yeah. But yes.
sort of, you should have been knowing not to say stuff,
So why not says, I don't read about health, which is probably good, because that gets into another sort of tricky area, because unless you're a real medical intuitive, which is a specific type of thing, and they are also seeing a physician, and they have medical people on their side kind of stuff. Yeah, you can tell someone, oh, you don't have cancer, don't worry about it, or tell them that they do, and then they start to freak out and get sick, because again, that influence is a real thing. Like in the medical community, if they misdiagnose someone and tell them that they have a disease that's going to kill them, and they're wrong about it, the person can sometimes think themselves to death before it comes out that it wasn't their test. So that just shows the power of the human mind and to affect reality, and divination is working with that whole
The main
idea.
problem is getting it to affect reality in the way you want it to affect reality. That's
a whole different issue. Okay, so Darling says, before my mother passed away, my grandfather that passed away a long time ago showed up beside my mother. That let me know my grandfather would be there for her in her passing. Yeah, and that's pretty common. The medical people are starting to notice that that happens a lot, and realizing that, when people start to see the loved ones who've passed before them, that they're close to dying, because that's what's going on. So Balloonhead says, it's an easy way for me to connect with spirit. I started scrying with the back of my eyelids since they'd always close when I'd use a mirror, and that's so scary. Well, I do it with my eyes closed a
Well,
lot.
I'm sure the scary thing was due to what we're talking about with the medium.
Ah,
Not,
okay, right. Yeah, that's the thing with conversation.
not the medium, the psychic.
The psychic, yeah, with the gun to his head. That would
think
definitely
it was
be
the medium,
scary,
yeah.
whatever they were. But yeah, I mean, whenever you're looking to try and figure out what's coming, I was thinking about this morning. Ironically, I had I had a situation where I was on a mountain, on the ice, going up a hill that I thought that they had treated, which they hadn't, and I couldn't get to the crest of the hill, and my car the tires just started spinning, and I was in place. So I couldn't get up the hill. So then I'm stuck on this incline, and I know that I'm not going to die that day. That was the thought. I knew I wasn't going to die, and so I started trying to back down the mountain on this icy road with no rails or anything on either side, and I kept sliding over towards the edge and almost went over the cliff numerous times and ended up in the ditch on the left side, which was good because I was about ready to go over a bridge that had no sides, and either side I would have gone over. But I was thinking about how it was somewhat dangerous that I knew that I wasn't going to die that day, so I maybe did the stuff I might not have done had I not known that. So, I don't know. It's just sort of an interesting thing. So Sophia says, you have talked about establishing a relation with the universe as a witch. Can you talk about it more? Well, it's about being in your life in the moment and being in the world and seeing and hearing and feeling what's going on around you and interacting with it. The universe is always like
It's always
paying
interacting,
attention.
telling you things.
Yeah, it's always paying attention to your feedback. If you think of the universe as kind of like a blank energetic slate, and everything you do and say and think and feel bounces into that blankness and then returns in another form. And depending on how you respond to that return, the universe learns your language, because it's like we all have our own language, our own symbols, the things that are important to us and not important to us based on our life experience. And so the universe learns what it is that you're looking for and then tries to give it to you. And then if you get to a point where you're trying to change what the universe gives to you, you have to go through this weird period where, you've set up this relay system where the universe says, yeah, you want this kind of a guy or this kind of a spouse or partner or job or whatever it happens to be. And now you don't want it anymore, but you've said historically that you did, so it keeps coming for a while just to see. And you have to keep rejecting it over and over and over again until the universe goes like, oh, okay.
And that's it.
So then we're going to switch tracks and send you something new.
After you've worked with magical stuff long enough, you can start to see that, and getting in harmony with it probably is the most important thing, is just to try to be in harmony with the universe and what it's trying to tell you. And
I think being consciously thoughtful about your actions probably gives you the most chance of understanding what's coming and what's happening and what, to develop that relationship. The universe knows who you are exactly.
yeah.
There's no hiding.
I have 3 or 4 times where I've set off things that I know was due to a thought that I had, and then something happened like right after that. 2 or 3 times where I wish I hadn't thought those things. That's always interesting when it happens. And one, of course, is the example we've mentioned before when I said the air mattress wasn't going to blow up, and it blew up right then.
What you said was the only thing that could now happen that would put the icing on the cake for this disaster of a of a holiday thing that we're having right now would be that the air mattress would explode, because everything else had already broken.
And I swear it did. It was not even 10 minutes before it blew up.
Oh no, it was instant. The words came out of your mouth. I said, don't say that, knowing what the universe was about to do, and then it started exploding.
It started making this, it went
Pop.
pop.
Pop, pop,
Pop, pop. Yep.
Only on his side, by the way.
Turned into a giant bubble in the air mattress.
Yeah, so he has his side as this big, huge, giant lump, and of course he keeps rolling onto me, and I keep rolling on the ground because there's no room. In the morning, it was like, okay, that's it. Our vacation is now officially over. We are going home. Not going to sleep like that again. But that happens a lot. It's like, you have to be careful of some of the kinds of things that you say to the universe that are challenges. And one of the ones that happened in my office, I had a client who was seeing a local doctor, and Christopher Reeves had just fallen off of his horse and fractured his pelvis and broken his back and became quadriplegic. And this doctor was also an equestrian. And he said to this client, he says, well, it's obvious to me why that happened, because he didn't know how to ride his horse. It was bound to happen. And she tells me he said this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a bad thing. I can't believe he said that, because the universe is going to whack him one, and he is going to fall off his horse. Less than 2 weeks later, he fell off his horse fell on him and shattered his pelvis. He almost died.
Yeah, it was weirdly.
He didn't become quadriplegic. My client came back to tell me what happened, and like, how did you know? I said, because he challenged the universe in such a cruel manner by having no empathy for the poor person that had just gone through this. The universe was about ready to smack him upside the head and say, okay, here's what it's like. Now what do you think? So you have to be careful of that too. So it's like, wow. And yes, she thought I was quite a psychic, and I'm like, no, it's just kind of experience. I was like, this is what happened. So if I find myself saying, I will never do blah, 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 I stop myself immediately and say, okay, wait, I'm sure that the universe would come up with a set of circumstances whereby I would be put into a weird position where I would end up doing something I currently think I would never do. So I take that back, and I'm not going to judge that at all. So, it's okay, universe. You don't have to let me know, because I figured that out on my own. So Balloonhead says, ha ha, that sort of thing makes me think the universe is mischievous. It's like, Jinx, you owe me a soda. And it's not for the horse accident. No, yes.
It definitely seems mischievous at
times. It definitely does seem mischievous at times. And Balloonhead says, hi to Lulu. And Darling says, laugh out loud. Yeah, so everything you do, everything you say, every action, every thought is you developing a relationship with the universe. That is what that is. It's your life experience and the consciousness that you bring to your life. So the more you can be in the moment, like when I was in line at the grocery store, and the woman at the checkout lady was talking and asking me questions. I was feeling fragile, so I was wearing 8 of my bracelets, 4 on each arm. And she noticed that and started conversing about it, wanted to know if my mother had taught me how to work with, about crystals. No, I kind of came into that on my own, and one thing led to another, and then she found out my name, and then she says, I've heard of you, and I've heard good things about you, and I've heard how many people you have helped, and I just want you to know that we know. And I was just like, wow. And if I wasn't in the moment being with her and being present, it probably would have just, gone off, and I would have been out of line. I would have gone on, and that would have been it. And even when I was leaving, we exchanged glances as I was heading back out the door. So I felt seen. She was in her life in the moment, and so was I. And that's when significant magical things happen. And it's like when we got our special rock before we got married. It's like the people came back,
that's another perfect example.
Yeah, I mean we were being respectful. It was up on Mount Shasta, and it was a spring equinox, and I just spontaneously decided I wanted to go to greet the spring on the mountain, and we lived only a few hours away, so we drove down there and drove up the mountain, and we were just standing there, and there were people that were already out doing something. It was pretty clear they were doing some kind of their own ritual event or what have you. So we sort of hung back and waited. And then they left and drove down the mountain, and then we went and did our little thing, which was just a little spontaneous hey, hi kind of thing. And then they came back up the mountain, and we turned around, and it's like, isn't that the car that just left? And yep, that is. And this woman jumps out of the car and runs over to me and says, the love between you two is just so beautiful. We had to come back and give you this. And she handed me a rose quartz heart, which I needed for our hand fasting ceremony, which was in May. And Ian looked at me, he says, things like this never happened to me. I said, well, they do now because you're with me, and things like this happen to me all the time. And it's like, last week we talked about the roses and the job and stuff like that, and that was it. So Joy says, reminds me of the Sting song, I'll be watching you, every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Well, yeah, the universe is kind of doing that, since we bring it in and out with every breath. Ian says, I always feel like that song is about a stalker. Well, it is, I think. It does have a stalkery feel, but if you think of it as the universe itself, it's a little different. So Balloonhead says, I told my mom years ago that I wasn't going to practice witchcraft when I was studying it academically. Wouldn't stretch my ears and wouldn't use a Ouija board, but all the things that happened. I like that. That's awesome. Sophia says, nice story, the quartz. Yeah. And it is.
It's just a wonderful little...
Yeah, and things like that happen to me a lot. My entire life has been that way. When I got my staff, it was like that. It was all extremely magical. It was like the universe saw me for who I was and wanted to acknowledge my existence and give me something in return for what I had done for others, or just for being me. I don't know, but it was pretty incredible. And I know the reason for that is just trying to be here and pay attention to what's happening, and being a kind person and not being mean-spirited and trying to play stupid jokes on people or whatever.
Well,
So
yeah, I always, it's a point. I don't talk about it too much, but I always make a point trying not to be, insult the universe, so to speak, if I'm talking about an earth element or something, or think about gnomes or the spirits associated with trees and things, and try to be kind to them all, I think overall it makes your life a little bit better.
yeah, and that's part of the whole journey that I've been on. I think about why I'm optimistic in spite of all the things that have happened to me. And I think it's because it's my nature to be a kind and optimistic and compassionate individual. And it seemed as if things around me were trying to, I don't know, beat it out of me, torture it out of me, abuse it out of me, or what have you. But it didn't work because, I had my pets, I had my cat and my dog that were pure them, the way they were, that I could look at and see. I had the trees that I climbed, and I had the night sky and the day sky that I would just lay out and look up at and try to, embrace the incredible wonder and, I don't know, unknowingness of the entire universe and so forth. And that kept me going. And I just knew the people were wrong. There was something wrong with the people. And I think that is the case in general. I just finished watching the documentary on Netflix about the International Space Station. I recommend watching that because it shows the potential for people to work together and put aside religion and beliefs and political ideology and so forth to make something great happen. And that in itself might be one of the best reasons I know of to do space exploration. Just because it helps us to get out of our own heads and outside. And watching the pictures, from the space station and looking at it and realizing this is not a special effect. This is just reality. That they're looking out the window as they're traveling 17,000 plus miles an hour and going around the globe every 90 minutes and seeing the whole thing. It's like, this is just what's out their window, and it's amazing. the universe is an incredible place. And there's just all kinds of amazing wonder and beauty and stuff out there. And isn't that the point? For us to allow ourselves the opportunity to experience that and be a part of it instead of feeling separate from it. And I think the idea of self-consciousness, of individuality and so forth, we feel more separated from the universe than anything else that exists on our planet. Everything else knows its place, understands what it is, doesn't have to think about what it is, it just is. And we're the ones who have to allow ourselves to stop thinking about how we're not and allow ourselves to be.
People look at nature as an enemy too at times, which is like, oh, I don't want to go out there in the wild with bugs and things. It's like,
well, yeah.
Really,
Well, there are dangers, there's no doubt. Nature is not cuddly. There's bears and all sorts of fun things out there that could
start out.
But you're paying attention.
Start out disliking it, then.
Yep. It's true. But anyway, everyone has their own way of trying to get there. That's one of the reasons why paganism is becoming more popular, I think, is because people have recognized that separation from the universe. So Balloonhead says, do you ever get nostalgic feelings of things that haven't happened in your life yet? I used to get this feeling in my heart randomly since I was a kid. And one day in 2021, I put a crystal pendant on an old chain and asked for it to be blessed. I felt that feeling as if that moment was something that was meant to happen. Yeah. In fact, I was thinking about that today too. Like there's a lot of times I have some foreshadowing about what's coming. And sometimes I can get more advanced notice. Sometimes I have to wait till closer to when it's going to happen. So I think that, in my dream state, I travel through time a lot, and I'm always looking ahead to see what's coming and trying to be aware of the potential hazards that might be on the way so I can be ready for them, which is kind of what happened just before COVID hit. With the dream I had about that, that was a pretty clear dream, and so I knew something pretty big was about to happen. But good things and bad things both, not just negative stuff. And now this I'm not sure of. I have a necklace that I got for my birthday from a shop south of town. There's a little store in the town south of us. And when I put that necklace on and the clasp clicked into place, I burst into tears. It was like all my chakras suddenly just went open, and I knew that this had belonged to me at one point, that this was my necklace. And it was a surprise, and it was amazing, and so we had to buy it because it's not like that happens very often. And so I think that sometimes things like that do happen, and everybody might have a slightly different way of experiencing it. So Balloonhead added, that feeling felt like a place, which is why it confused me. I think a place is like, in this case, a place is where your mind is, that space inside of you. It's a special place. And it is a place. It's like when you're in an altered state of consciousness, which is the reason people do divination, because they want to see things from a different perspective, then it is like a different place. It's like a foreign place. And sometimes you don't really remember what it's like until you go back there. Sort of like a dream state. It's sort of interesting. Boomhead says, ooh, that makes sense. Yeah. And when I get a lot of deja vus, I figure that I'm on the track that I saw myself on. It's like, okay, things are going along the way I expected, so today I'm going to have 5 deja vus. It's like, okay, this apparently is a very settled day, because every time I looked at it, there it was. But yeah, and it's an interesting process going through all that. It's like it's hard to explain because it isn't. You can't like take it out and look at it, and it's invisible and not holdable, but being able to change your state of consciousness at will is important, because that way you have some control over what that is. That's a lot. Cool.
That's with the
Sun,
that's a
cloud, and the rain, and an umbrella, and the snowstorm, and a snowman,
Yep.
and a lightning,
And that starts
and
the
the
fire.
fire, and then you need the umbrella, and then the rainbow comes out. All right,
Putting the umbrella away because it's,
that's right. The umbrella is now going away.
yeah,
Cool. I like it. It's a story.
sorry.
Hey, emojis as a language. Some people use it that way. So cool. But yeah, that's why everyone's path is individual. It's because we all have different things we're learning, and different abilities we might come by naturally, and different balances we need to create in our lives, and it's like there's not a one size fits all. There's not like a book you can buy and follow these steps and then bam, you're a witch. Or you have developed a relationship with the universe. It's an ongoing process, and it's like every minute of every day and every breath.
Yeah, it really is more a way of life than just a practice.
Yeah. Lulu says, back to hieroglyphics.
Yep.
Sagimoon says, hi guys, I've been listening. Hi Sagimoon. Lunha says, laugh out loud. We are Lulu. Back to hieroglyphics, yes. And future generations may have no clue what it is we're talking about.
Probably true.
Eve says, merry meet. Hi Eve. So I find it interesting when I remember past lives and different forms of divination I've used in different lifetimes, is there's so many similarities between them. It's like there's always some reflection, some state of meditative state you have to be in order to access that part of the universal mind or what have you. And then the interpretation of the imagery or the feelings that you get. Somebody was pointing out that now empath is like a common thing that people say about themselves, and it's like a catchword kind of thing.
Right.
And, maybe that's true, but if people ever understand the meaning of the word, then it's a good word to use.
Well, the same thing happened to namaste.
Yeah,
It became like a catchphrase rather than what it means. It means a comprehension that your soul is the same as my soul, and I love you as I love myself.
And I can meet you in that place where we're both divine.
Where you're both divine, exactly.
Yes, and I had somebody who used that as a get out of jail free card and say something really obnoxious and rude and then end it with namaste as if that made it all better.
Yeah.
And I got really mad. I said, don't you go and namaste me, you ass. It's like, come on. So Eve says, oh goodness, I just said that same thing to my 14-year-old this evening. Back to hieroglyphics. Balloonhead says, future generations might be surprised that our videos are flat 2D instead of 3D holograms. Yep, that could be. And Eve thought that was funny too. Balloonhead says, people do in fact overuse those words. They do, because they become popular. They're like the popular catchphrase kind of thing without understanding the meaning behind them. Lou says, I've noticed that some who call themselves empath is actually rather narcissistic. Yeah. I've met a lot of empaths that aren't actually empaths at all because they have no idea how you're feeling. They only know how they're feeling. And hi Ruth, welcome to fan support. But yes, so Moonfire says, Barden talked about the picture language and Andrea Vlitinus experimented with emoji magic. Cool.
Okay.
I could see that could work. And certainly, pictures are powerful.
Yeah, and if it's, of course, when Barton speaks about the metaphorical language, picture language, he's talking about, of course, not with words, where your mind is rather blank and you get the meaning and the concept as an image. Yeah. In other words, not your normal, like, brain full of thoughts type of thing.
Yeah. So Balloon Balloon Head says, I felt strange about the extreme commercialization of spiritual concepts, tools, and words. Oh, I know.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot
mean,
of
there
that.
are some of them where I'm going like, excuse me, what is going on here? I'm sorry, you don't know what you're talking about. You're capitalizing on a notion that crystal water is good for you, and you're gonna charge $300 for a bottle that you have your crystal in, so that you can charge up your water. It's like, what? And it's really not what it's about, which is one of the reasons why this path used to be so silent, I guess.
Yeah,
And
well,
because the average person doesn't necessarily understand what it is.
bye, Violet. Sorry.
Yes, bye, Violet. Um, and I don't mind people making money by whatever it is that they're doing, because if that's what you're
Well, yeah,
doing,
you have a right
and
to
that's
charge
your
a
expertise and
price
so
for
forth,
your time and your effort and stuff. For
then
sure.
it's not that charging for magic is inherently wrong. There's that as well that people have, that is sort of a leftover from Christianity, the notion that God gives you a gift, and if you abuse it by charging people for it, then he'll take it away, which, if that was true, there'd be a lot of people out there who are abusing their gifts that wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So I doubt that that's real.
No, like I
But
think the
still,
part of the problem is they start charging for things they really can't do because
Yeah.
the money is the goal, not the
right.
result.
And we were talking about the homeopath I worked for just the other day, which is the same thing. He was all about how much money he could make as a homeopathist or naturopath, I guess. And for him, every person that came through the door, dollar signs went off. He didn't care for how the person was feeling. He cared for how much money their problem represented to him as far as a goal went. And people could feel it. And me as a massage therapist, I'm charging for my services. But people don't get that energy from me. I care about how they feel. I'm there to try and make them feel better. And the fee is for my expertise and my time. And, I think that there needs to be a way to separate those things out, maybe. But buyer beware, absolutely. I mean, if someone's going to charge you $1,000 for a picture of something, I'd say there's probably a questionable something going on that just seems unrealistic and unreasonable. And then, of course, all the cults that get started, where people are looking for spiritual enlightenment, and because they're seekers and they're not quite there yet and they haven't worked through certain things, they're potentially good victims for a shyster. And unfortunately, sociopaths love those kinds of people because, they take whatever it is you're looking for and turn it into their meal ticket, you doing whatever they want to say, what they want you to do, and not having a mind of your own. And then they get all the power. And yeah, it's frustrating. So, he says, I think that is grossly incorrect. Sophia says, hello everyone. Hi, Sophia. That's our other Sophia. He says, I believe it is incorrect for others to shame the witch in the woods for charging. After all, we do live on planet Earth where everything requires money.
Well, and there's another aspect too.
Well, it
In
is a
some
form
cases-
of energy exchange.
Well, yes, it is. That's fine. I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything about that. But
Sorry, I made you lose your thought.
yep.
Sorry, I derailed him.
Sorry. It's the fact that in some cases it seems to be necessary because people don't value what they get at all unless they pay a fair price for it. So that's another aspect to think about. If the person doesn't value the effort you put forth to help them, chances are they're short-circuiting it by their thoughts
That's true.
and emotions and things. So
Especially if it's a reasonable thing.
yeah, if they, sometimes people need that. I agree it's fair as an energy exchange. I think it's fine that people charge, but don't be exorbitant and don't lie to make money. I mean, I think that's just a bad thing in general in the spiritual field, and I don't think I have to explain that.
I think the universe notices if you're not genuine. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And then the things you get back are not going to be the things that you probably should be getting back or want. I don't know. But yeah. So Eve says, indeed, energy exchanges. I would love to barter poetry, but hey, yeah, it's the thing. And I remember when I was younger and remembering a lot of past lives, it was very annoying to me that I had to get a 9 to 5 job in order to make a living, in order to get food and pay rent and survive, because in the old days, the village would take care of those needs for me. I wouldn't have to go hunt. I wouldn't have to go and, scratch the earth in order to grow food. I would be, people would give me the bread and the food and the sustenance and build the house and help me out, because in exchange, I was there for when they were sick or having a baby or needed counseling or anything else. And it was a job. It was a fulfilling, it was a position in a society that was needed and was seen as valued. And by being valued, that was how they valued it, by taking care of the person and letting them, have the energy to be spending all their time helping others instead of having to help themselves. Of course, it took me a while to adapt being here with all the other stuff. Then I found a job where I could help people and get paid, so that was pretty awesome. I was just like, wow, I wish I'd thought of that sooner.
Of course, we have to remember, we're in the U.S., and a lot of things I say about society in general are maybe largely about the U.S.
In that filter, through that filter,
yeah. Because I haven't been outside the country enough to ever, I don't think, actually.
No, I think the farthest we got was Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii.
I've been to Canada. That's it.
And Georgia, but
Georgia's practically another country, but it's in the United States.
Washington State, I don't think that counts.
No, that's
like
still
right next door.
Right, that's just up north. Yeah, a little bit, but yes. Eve says, I wish more people could incorporate the old ways. That is the real treasure. Balloonhead says, my best friend says I'd be up in a temple somewhere being an oracle. Yeah, I did that. It's not that much fun. There's a lot of pressure in that job, too, I can tell you.
No,
especially when wars and stuff like that are decided based upon what you see and what you say.
What kind of oracle? Are you having to sniff volcano fumes?
I did that, yes, at Delphi, before Apollo came onto the scene.
That doesn't sound like much fun.
No, and then in Egypt, I was...
It might be fun. Depends on how badly you hallucinate from those volcano fumes.
It's a job, but like everything else, it's got its ups, it's got its downs. It's like... not as much as it's cracked up to be. Sophia says, do you know to speak all the languages from past life that you remember? I don't remember those, which is very annoying. Would be nice, and I wish I could, but it's not that Barton, precise for me.
Barton says it is a possibility that you can recover languages and things you spoke in a past life. I haven't attempted to do so.
I'm thinking that might happen to people that are hit in the head and go in a coma and come out speaking another language in a different accent.
I've heard of that.
Or sometimes a completely different language, like this woman never spoke French in her life, and then she's speaking French fluently, like it's like no big deal and doesn't understand English.
I've heard of several of those cases.
So maybe, I don't know. Balloonhead says, ha, I'm from Georgia. Eve says, does he have a passenger seat? Sophia says, or Eve says to Sophia, I speak all of the languages in the astrals. Well, yeah, because telepathy has no language structure. It's just pure thought and emotion, and you can pick that up. And Eve says, when I wake up, it's gone, and all I remember is me or others telling me that I must remember. Oh, I hate that. Well, I have that happen. Yeah, you must remember, and sometimes it works. When I was in the Akashic records, I don't know how long I was there, and the keeper was standing behind me and making me look at this page, and it was pictures in my head and whatnot, and kept saying, read and remember, read and remember, read and remember, or look and remember. And I got to the point where apparently I was going to remember, and he let me wake up, and then I remembered. But, yeah. What can I say? We have our moments. But yeah, but that's the thing. One of the things I like about this form here is that, it generates conversation and ideas and so forth. And also it lets people from diverse places get together and communicate and find out that even if in their culture they're considered strange and an oddball, they're not alone. Thank goodness. I'm seeing my doctor tomorrow, and I was fantasizing about telling her what I was. I don't know. We'll see. I was thinking of looking at her and going like, I think by now you've picked up that I'm a little bit different from other people, and see what she does. So Haruka says, hello, this may be the first time I caught a live. Well, welcome. Welcome to our live. Opal says, hi. This is a safe environment to ask questions about magical subjects. We had one person who stepped over the line in his conversations on our channel that I had to hide from the channel because he just wasn't accepting this conversation is over. So boundaries, we have them, but yeah. Other than that, we're pretty open. So Eve says, the keeper, you say? I've been there. I was told when it was time to go, and I was being shown pictures and objects to remember. Holy smokes. See? Not alone. Other people have had it too. Aruka says, oh dear. Laugh out loud. Yeah, so everybody here is welcome, so long as they're, what's the word? Polite. Reasonably. Not putting down other groups of people. Because we're all so different, that's the thing, is we are very different people, there's no doubt about it. And so far it's going really well. We finally got rid of that weird site that kept popping in, trying to mess things up. I shouldn't have mentioned them. No, universe, nope. Don't say anything. If that happens now, I'm going to be really annoyed. Haruka says, what's the topic right now? Oh, yes, I agree. Well, we've been talking about divination, and then we started talking about past life memories and languages and relations with the universe and how we develop them and stuff like that.
So the topic is more or less
open.
What you want it to be.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to ask. We'll jump in and see what we have to say about this subject.
Unless we're totally dumb on the subject.
And which we'll tell you if we don't know anything, and that's fine.
There are a
few. Eve says, yes, please do be open to interpretation. No judgments around here. Well, that's like the trick of communication, especially written communication, but even verbal communication has its same issues.
Well, you have to know that what the other person is saying, you have to agree to the same definition on those words, and usually people have slightly different definitions for all their words. So, I've said it before, I'm surprised people can communicate at all, but it does work well enough, but it's really hard to be accurate about what you're trying to say because it's so easy to get the wrong image.
The person I'm supposed to help with the paranormal investigation, I'm completely baffled. She said, like, okay, she told me that day I was supposed to go, she had the day off, which made me think that meant she worked out of the home.
Right.
So when I was trying to reschedule, I said, what are your days off? She says, I'm always off because I work from home. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I assumed when you said that you had the day off that meant that you worked out of the home. And then she got mad at me and won't talk to me.
Because of that?
That was the conversation. So, I suggested, why don't we do a video chat so I can find out more about what's going on before I go, and it's been, ghosted since then, so I'm just wow.
Don't worry about it then, they're asking you to do them a favor, so.
That's what I figure. I'm like, hey, I don't have to go and help you, that's fine by me. So Haruka says, I've trying to be more open to the universe, hit some blocks, but I'm sure I can get over them, probably not as fast as I wish to. Well, it's never as fast as we would like. Yeah. It's just like, hey, I learned something new just a couple of weeks ago that I did not know, and everybody was making fun at me for it. But, the thing you stick in your sink I always wondered how come sometimes when I put it in there, the water stays in, and sometimes it doesn't, and then I discovered that it screws in, and no one had ever told me that before. So I just learned that. And it's like, we never know when we're going to learn something useful. Balloon Head says, I remember calling my friend's friend that I had just met a stranger, and she took that as something negative. Yeah, projection, and what is, you say something to someone, and people aren't used to meaning what they say. And Ian and I are very literal. We mean exactly what we say. We're not trying to
We try.
We try.
But sometimes the word is open to 3 or 4 different interpretations.
Well, right. But the thing is that most people don't communicate that way. So you're talking to someone who always is trying to say something, but not quite saying whatever it is that they're trying to say. And then you say your straightforward thing. They're trying to figure out what it is that you're really trying to say by what you're saying. And
then they give
and then you start, what? Like, no, that's not what I was talking about. I wasn't inferring some secret thing in this thing I just said. I'm just saying, okay, this is where I'm at.
Yeah, I always picture it as if you're surrounded by an egg of different stained glass pieces, different shapes and things, and so everything comes in depending on your particular, environment you've got around you. Everything is changed slightly in color. Every little thing has all the interpretations from what's coming at you. So you have to, trying to communicate with somebody else, you have to think of all that, how close are they getting to what you're saying? I mean,
that's why it's a miracle you get to know anybody.
It is.
And that's why we really appreciate each other, because it's like, yeah, even with other members of my family, I sometimes get that feedback, from people that they are reacting differently than what I was.
And that helps me a little bit, and not to stress about it too much, because of course everybody has their filters that are, in their whole life that they use.
That's why I like that thing, not my circus, not my monkeys. Yep. It's like I hand you this thing that I'm doing, and then your monkeys start playing with it, and then I don't know what's going to happen to it by the time it gets to the other side of your circus. It's just like, okay. So Haruka says, oh my God, I have one of those when I moved into this house. I never had a drain stopper like that before. Now you know how it works, if you didn't already. Moonfire Dawn says, ghosted by the ghosted, huh? Must not want the problem fixed enough to get help. I know. I'm like, seriously, I'm volunteering to come to your place.
And that's part of it. Not charging a huge amount of money.
And she's like annoyed that I have a life that interfered with when I was going to come over in the first place, or so it would seem. I don't know, but anyway. But I like that. He says, they are playing Detective Taylor, and there you are just trying to say what you mean and mean what you say. I know, I like that elephant. Horton the Who. That was Horton. Yeah. He said that. Okay. I say what I mean, I said what I meant. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. An elephant's faithful 100%. So I got the meant is in there somewhere. Got the wrong quote, but that's the idea.
Close enough.
And I
didn't have kids, so I didn't pay attention to.
Well, I saw that, and I thought, well, that's me. It's like, I mean exactly what I say, and I try to do that. If I say I'm going to be there at this time, I'm going to be there at this time, or I'm going to call somebody and let them know. Instead of like, So Balloon says, right, a stranger isn't a bad thing. I had just never met them before. What else do you call a person? A new person, all right. Lou says, that's interesting, Ian. I imagine I'm in the center of a prism and everything gets ever so slightly distorted.
Yep, similar thing.
Yep. Haruka says, a stranger is a friend you've never met before. Isn't that the saying? Yes, that is one of those sayings. Eve says, Haruka, I have heard of such things. I think so, Haruka says, Balloonhead. Moonfire Dawn says, people I knew my whole life act like I'm not speaking the same language, yet you guys almost always get what I say, even when I'm wrestling with autospell. Well, that's because I assume that you're trying to say something that makes sense, right? Instead of trying to be, abstruse. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant, and Elephant's faithful 100%. Thank you, Balloonhead. That's the quote. I like Horton. Eve is laughing like crazy. Love you guys, Siofra, and thank you. But having a sense of humor. This was interesting. I was talking when I had to talk to someone about her medical and so forth. I'm talking to the woman on the phone. She's asking me a bunch of questions and whatnot. Asks me my age, and I tell her, and she at some point in the conversation she says, the reason why you're doing so well is because you have such a fantastic attitude. You laugh a lot. You see the humor in things, and that keeps you young. And I just thought, yeah, that is true. And again, the universe was noticing me and making a statement about who I was that was accurate. It's kind of nice when you get accurate ones. I'm so tired of the inaccurate ones. I've had enough of them.
By the way, it just reminds me of this thing, which I'm going to mention. I probably mentioned this before for a lot of you long-time listeners, but I asked the universe one day before we went out the house, I said it out loud too, I believe. Okay, universe, what have you got for us today? Or what have you got for me today, was what I said. We went out of the house, went down, decided we were eating lunch out, and I was getting my soda at the soda thing for the little restaurant we were at, and I got slammed into by this huge woman who fell on me.
I remember.
She was like, bam, it probably saved her life or saved her from a broken hip or something because she fell on me. So I thought that was interesting timing, and you gotta be careful what you ask the universe for.
Yeah, that's always a good one. Be careful.
I guess that's a good thing because I helped somebody out by being a barrier to this very heavy falling woman. She wasn't injured, but
You were the doorstop.
yeah.
Or the woman stop or whatever. And she
So,
said
yeah.
she fell all the time. She was always falling.
Yeah.
But she could have hit her head right there in the station with all the...
and the timing, that
Yep.
I just said that and then went out.
Yep. Balloonhead says he's the cutest elephant. Eve says above and below.
Yeah.
Haruka says, I agree. Balloonhead says, I love that. Eve says, I do concur. Laughter is the best medicine and humor is the spice of life, I always say.
Yep.
If you can't laugh, you're effed. Yep. Moonfire's on. Ian, it's raining women. It was a giant hailstone. Yes, indubitably, says Haruka. Yeah, so, yeah, it's, life is always interesting. You never know what you're going to learn when you walk out the door. Yeah, I try to pay attention to the things that I say out loud for sure, because once you say it out loud, you sort of make it more real, I think.
Yeah, well, it is true.
Well, words have got power. They sort of help
and
shape
if
the
you
universe.
Think about it, the words have thoughts behind them that you're sending out, and they have thoughts behind them that the other person is picking up in whatever fashion, or whether it's changed or whatever. Then they're going to try to communicate back to you. So just a regular conversation, you're affecting lots of energy movement and stuff, and just trying to converse with people.
Like you're a ripple in a wave turning into a potential avalanche without...
And a lot of it depends on how intuitive they might be about what you're saying, or how far they off from your definition of words and things. That's freaking complicated.
It is complicated. So Sophia says, can you share with us your ritual and spell for people telling you the truth? Well, actually, I got it out of the 5,000 spell book. I think there's a video I did on books, and that was one of the ones that I showed people. And it was like a hoodoo kind of spell that required I think a beef tongue and piercing the tongue and stuff like that. It's not my usual style, but I was doing this for someone else, not for me. I was not trying to make people tell me the truth.
And had no idea how much a beef tongue costs.
Oh my God, yes. And then when I told her how much it cost, she gave me like, $10. It was like 50. I was like, okay. So apparently you didn't really think that what I did had any value whatsoever, and why did you ask me to do that in the first place? I guess that's the kind of stuff you're going to get.
It's easy to ask.
Yeah.
When it's at the other person's effort and expense, it's easy to ask, so that's why you gotta...
So yes, I did that, and took it out into the woods and buried it somewhere, and worried about the animals that might find it since it had all these sharp objects in it. So I really didn't feel really comfortable with the way that spell was worked, but I went through with it anyway. And it was after that that especially the people involved in the spell work were just blurting out everything that you usually keep inside.
All the things that you don't want to hear.
Usually the things you don't tell other people. So anyway.
Or you don't want to hear when other people tell you.
Yeah. So Eve says, indubitably, nice adjective, laughing. Haruka says, that's what I'm trying to teach my family. Words and thoughts have power. My son is going to take longer to teach. Yeah. So Eve says, Siofra, I can't with you. You get what you pay for. Yeah. And I mean, you know, Sophia says, yeah, that sounds awful. I'm vegetarian. There is no alternative. Well, I'm sure that there's an alternative. Just
lots of alternatives. That just happens to be the one we picked.
That was just the one we used because, you know, tongue, speech, telling people things is obviously the reason. But maybe there's like a plant that's shaped like a tongue that you could use instead. That's the reason why spell work is so individual too.
There's a bunch of stuff like that. There's a bunch of, there's actually a bunch of Indian, as in India, spells that come from there, and I can't think of the manual, but there's a particular one for plants and herbs that you use for all kinds of things. They've made a particular speciality about it, and I don't know anything about their system much. I know it has to do a lot with mantras associated with the plants. So
Eve says, oh, that was so very thoughtful. You are a considerate witch. I try to be. Joy says, oh, that's a hoot. Would love to make the people around me babble on. Balloonhead says, can you draw a tongue? Well, there's an idea. Or you could make a tongue out of clay, for example. You know, that would be a way of doing it out of non-hardened clay. You could make an effigy of a tongue and do it instead of getting the tongue. I wasn't thinking fast enough on my feet because that would have been better.
You know, I mean, yeah, it would have been easier and more convenient. Sculpey works pretty good for me for making like bodies of elementals or things or whatever you're using it for.
So Eve says, Balloonhead, have you ever seen Moana? Oh, that's the movie. We did watch it. Thank you very much for the recommendation. Joy says, maybe you can just imagine the tongue, and you can do that too. And Balloonhead says, I have. Eve says, that one that grabs her from the realm of the monsters. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, it's interesting. Because, I mean, there's the law of attraction, and then there is the law of similarities. So if you make something, that's what puppets are. You're not making an actual person. You're making something to represent a person, so there's no reason why you can't make something to represent a body part.
Right.
Because that's how, you know, the that kind of magic works. And you name that thing what you want it to be between the worlds, and it becomes that by virtue of the fact that you've named it that, words having power. And associating everything that you think and feel about that with it. So, yeah.
Well, you know, it's the fact that there are as many types of magical operations as there are things in the universe. You know, there's, yeah, understand the basics. Then you can come up with how you want to do things. You don't have to memorize a bunch of routines and things. Of course, I did plenty of that too.
So Balloonhead laughed, and Eve says, don't forget, folks, when you put a seed in your mouth for a few minutes, then let it dry out, then plant it. Balloonhead says, oh, random, have you noticed if the friends you make are similar to you in unexpected ways? I don't have very many friends. I mean, you know, real friends. So I don't know that I'm a good case for that. I have just a couple of actual close friends, Ian being one of them. And then my friend Shay up in Portland, who I've known since 1985, I think, or 86, somewhere in there. So, and no, I don't think so. I don't really think I've noticed much in the way of similarities because I see everybody as being so different. I was at a thing with Lewis from Orcas Island, and he was doing a guided journey kind of thing where you go along a path, you find a cup, you pick it up, you look at it, you look around, see what kind of trees you have, you look at a gate or a fence or a wall and see what it looks like. And then later he interpreted it. And so for me, when I found the cup, it was very ornate and very amazing and special. And that represented my ideas about marriage and relationships, which is true. You know, I consider them very sacred and important to me and special and unique. And then when I looked at the trees that were around me, every single tree I saw was different. There were fruit trees and, you know, every kind of tree I ever had saw was actually there in the vision. And he said that represented the people around you and how you see them. And so I see people as individuals, unique in and of themselves, and that is true. And then the wall that I saw was a pretty short wall. It was like, you know, just a couple, like a foot high or so, and he said, you know, to go beyond the wall, what happens when you go I just jumped over the wall and went, and that represented death, and how you saw death as not much of a big deal and not much of a transition for me, not something that was a big huge block waiting to like catch me off guard or anything like that. So it was very interesting, and that's how I try to see people as actual individuals, and I don't look for their similarities to me so much as I look to see how they're unique and try to understand it, I guess. That's me. So it might be different if it was, I don't know.
Well, it's the same thing. I'm naturally, my personality tends towards being more of a loner, so I do not currently. I have one person I would call a good friend at the moment, and he has changed a lot over the last few years. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of friends and things either. And when I did when I was a teenager more and doing the whole friend thing more, I still didn't find it. You know, I thought I had friends and good friends and things, but it turned out they weren't good friends. And they were people I rather shouldn't be with, and yeah, so I had too much screwed up in myself at that time to make any good friends, and then since I've gotten over myself a little bit, I haven't met the people I'm compatible with.
It's difficult when the more clear you become, the harder it is to make those kinds of, you can't make like casual relationships or.
You can't, but they're just a casual.
Well, yeah,
you know,
but
I mean,
it's not.
yeah.
It's not like they're friends, and the things that are important to you, like the things that are important in our relationship and how we think alike, not just our, you know, we have lots of differences, but we have some core things that are important to both of us,
Yeah.
and our personal ethics and how we treat people and how we are in the world. If he suddenly woke up one day and became a completely different person, of course I'd take him to the doctor first, but say, is there a brain tumor?
By now
But
she knows well enough who I am.
yeah, and so, you know, yeah, it's an interesting subject because people do sometimes attract. They have that saying that you see in others what is in you, and I don't think that's necessarily true once you become clear, because I can
Well,
recognize
yeah,
the
that's part of
sociopath.
what you're getting rid of once you start
Right,
becoming
I
clear,
can
yeah.
recognize the sociopath and not be one.
Yeah, that's part of becoming clear.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's for me the goal, is to become as unique as I am for me, not for anybody else, and then try to allow space for other people to do the same. So, you know, people don't have to do something in particular to impress me or you know, get my attention or something like that. But I have my boundaries where certain, you know, you can't treat me badly because I don't have time to waste on people who are going to treat me badly. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, one of the things is consistency, because so many people have a false front that they put up to impress people they've just met and things like that. And that very thing becomes what does them in later in a friendship when that's found out to be not true, you know. Showing in some ways there's nothing wrong with showing the best you can be, you know, so I'm not trying to say don't do that, but the exaggeration that people do to try to impress somebody is what always causes the problem.
Well, yeah, because, you know, you can only keep that up for so long.
Yeah,
Being genuine is the most important part. Then you don't have to try.
And you're not giving anybody false expectations.
Exactly.
You're just being genuine.
If you're just genuinely yourself and you're authentic, then and you're always are telling the truth, you don't have to try and remember your own story, and you don't have to work at trying to hide who you are because you're worried that someone else is going to see that and not like it.
And then you'll be consistent, and so
then you're going to be with the people
and things, that
are going to appreciate you for who you are. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay, so Eve says, I've noticed the weird things I've come in common with the unlikely. Sandcat says, Kia, Oro, so happy to be here for your live chat. Hi, Sandcat. Eve says, ooh, I like that perspective. Balloonhead says, that seems like a very cool experience. Eve says, hi, Sandcat. Sandcat says, hi, Eve. Eve says, Haruka, I've become unapologetically choosy in the folks I choose to fraternize with. Yeah, because who has time for baloney, right? There's only so much time in the universe. You got better things to do. Lulu says, I've noticed in my life that I have friends for a while and then something happens in which I move to a different level in my life, psychology, and they just drop off on their own. I've tried to hold on to people, but it never worked. Once it's time to move on, they move on.
That's very true.
Yeah, and sometimes I've been trying to learn not to project positivity onto people and have unreasonable expectations of who they are based on who I think they could be or who I'm hoping they will be.
Yeah, because that
That's
only
been
makes
difficult.
things worse. Yeah.
So that's been a hard lesson, which is why I no longer have a group. It's like, that's the main reason. So Balloonhead says, oh, I see, I understand a lot. I was lucky to find people that I loved being around, and over the years I found we have unexpected similarities. Yes.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad you were that lucky.
Well, you know, we have definite similarities with each other and with some other people.
Yeah, well, with each other.
Yeah,
mostly,
with each other mostly. Eve Wolf says, for one thing, I have lots of kiss. For another thing, I don't trust many people. Opal says, it can be lonely when you don't have anyone to bounce your thoughts on something that can be weird to them. That's why we like this forum here, so you have an opportunity to bounce ideas off somebody that you know is not going to jump on you or look at you sideways and go like, okay, can we back out of the room quickly?
We bounce ideas off each other all the time.
Yeah, not being afraid to question what we're doing. You know, it's like, it's always good to look at that. Sandcat says, I feel lucky that I can sense a good person from a bad one or a dishonest person. It makes for a bit of a lonely life. I prefer this to being around false people. Well, yeah, and life doesn't, it might be lonely of humans, but that doesn't mean it has to be lonely. Because there's lots of other things out there that can help fill the gap. Anyway, Moonfire Dawn says, you guys know how lonely my last year has gone. Shows like this help a lot, and over time you're less lonely as you learn to love being alone with yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you become good company for yourself, eventually you're going to find someone who's going to find you good company with them. I hope. At least I would think. If it's in the cards, like we were talking about earlier. Eve says, Lul, I can relate. Lul says, it hurts to lose a friend, but it is what it is. I can't stay in the same level. My soul is on its own path. And yeah, we do outgrow people. And that happens when we're making any kind of a change, like going from an addiction to a sober lifestyle. Definitely changes the people that are going to be interested in being around you or comfortable with being around you. So
yeah, if you're changing, you decide not to do drugs, for example, then a lot of times people around the people you're used to hanging around get upset over that.
So Haruka says, I struggle not to mirror people's behavior when I first meet them. I also unintentionally mimic the way they talk, and this includes their accents. It's embarrassing. I do that too. Well, I've done that.
Yeah,
I think that's a way to try and make them feel comfortable and get in their head.
It's kind of a natural thing.
Balloonhead says, people tell me I'm a bit weird, so my vibe and personality are a great filter for friends versus acquaintances. And Eve says, it was kids, not kiss. Well, that makes more sense. Thank you for clarifying that. But hey, for all I know, you have a bunch of Kiss albums, and that's important to you. So Balloonhead says, I think as long as you have yourself, you're not alone. Sophia says, can a sociopath change for the better? I think it's possible. No,
Well,
it is not.
It depends, again.
If they're a true sociopath, it is not possible.
That's it, definitions. A true sociopath is one where it's
There's a part of their
almost
brain,
hardwired into them.
yeah,
Where they,
a part of their
yeah.
brain is not hooked up the same way as everyone else's. They cannot experience empathy. They cannot put themselves in anyone else's position. Everything is about them. So if they are a real sociopath, they cannot change,
Yeah,
and don't hang your hat on that and hope.
Yeah, but if it's a true sociopath, so that depends, because most of the people out there you meet aren't true sociopaths, though there are a pretty good percentage of them in the population, really.
4% of the population are sociopaths. That's 1 in 25 people that you meet. And they're not always brilliant, but they're still...
If they don't have that built-in lack of total empathy and other things cause their sociopathic behavior, they can definitely get over it, assuming it's not something chemical or...
They can certainly pretend not to be a sociopath.
Physical. Yeah.
Because that's one of the things they're good at, mimicking people's feelings and pretending to be like other people, but they're still the same underneath if they're real sociopaths, so you can't always tell. But I'm trying to learn how to accept people for who they actually are presenting themselves as being and not hoping they're going to change, because that leads to a lot of disappointment.
Yeah.
And danger, personal danger, potentially. So Balloonhead says, I'm my closest friend, and Haruka, I do that too. Sandcat says, I prefer animals to most humans. I actually like being alone after everyone goes to bed. I enjoy knitting late into the night. Yeah, I do too. Right now I'm crocheting, but, same idea. And I often say I like trees better than people, because you know where they stand. Haha.
Well, that's true.
Eve Wolf says, this is true. Being alone is not synonymous with being lonely. Yeah. And I do that thing too, the mirror thing. And that's often what you do to get into someone's frame of reference in order to understand them. So it's good. Haruka says, it's good to know I'm not the only one. Luo says, question to everyone, how do your spouses or significant other react to your witchy ways?
Well, don't need to ask that of us.
Well, obviously not.
Yeah.
And Eve says, no ma'am, you are not. I do believe that finding common ground with a variety of people is a gift. This is not the same as sociopath. Sandcat says, I love crochet too. Yeah, I'm making a new shawl. Aruka says, my husband loves it. We are both trying to get back to pagan ways before Christian contact. We did a Viking blot for Christmas. It was very moving. Sounds
Cool.
like fun. It is nice when your significant other is at least open to the path that you're on and not judgmental. We actually have friends that are, one is a Mormon and one is a pagan witch, and they make it work by respecting each other's paths. So Ian points out that we're getting close to the end of our show. We're really getting into this stuff, though. It's fun. Eve says, Sandcat, my daughter does too. Moonfire Dawn says, I stay up and do my reading at night because it's quieter vibes without people awake.
It is that, and that's why Barden apparently himself, Barden the person, not the Barden the author or whatever, would do his magic late at night for that very reason. He'd go out like at midnight or whatever, because it's so many less thought forms and things around.
So, Haruka says, I am Native and Welsh ancestry. My husband is Lakota and German ancestry. We love learning together.
Cool.
And that's good. Exploring those things is just always fantastic. So I guess we have to say goodbye. Again, this has been a lovely show. We've thoroughly enjoyed conversing with you guys. And so thank you all for attending and for making our Sunday fun. Darling says, blessed be and good night, everyone. Moonfire Dawn says, my marriage ended after a year or two in the craft, but it's not the cause because we got into it together. Got our first tarot decks together, but the magic stirred it up. That can happen if you're not ready for it. So, all right, guys. You guys be safe wherever you are and embrace the strange, wonderful universe that we all exist in, and fill your hearts with love and fun and whatever you need. Okay, guys? So, blessed be. Thank you all for being here. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.